Wait. Hi, everyone. That's better. Oh my. What happened with the light? Did he do too much here? Hold on, let's see if we can fix that. Hi, Pipoo! Hi, Mela! Hi, Naraj! Hi, sunny day! A very yellow camera today. Yeah, I know. I don't know what the hell happened. Let me check it out. Because it is really yellow. Oh my god. What? And I even turned the saturation down? What? Wait, hold up. Let's test this out. So what if we go 1? This is normal. Oh my god, there's something wrong with the cable. Like, what the hell is that? Okay, let's see if we can kind of make it a little bit more normal. Okay. Okay. My monster? Wait, which one? Oh no. Could it be that I'm trying? Yeah, that could be. That could actually be. I left. Oh, I went out like last week, I think, and I left the white balance on. Well, it also looks completely different to the camera, to the actual camera. So we don't know what is happening, but. Oh, my Monstera behind me. Yeah, I got a couple of plants. Like you can barely see this one. I mean, the longest part. Yeah. My monsters. I was so confused there, Andrea. Tanning is bad for your skin tone. I actually did went out, so this is not like an accurate representation of my current skin, I promise. But yeah, it was good. A lot of sun today. No worries. Hi, Eloy. How are you doing? It's good to see like a bunch of new people here. Welcome, and welcome to the community as well. So happy to have you all here. So I'll give you like a short introduction because we got a couple of new people here. So this is like a weekly event where you as part of the community just get to choose when you want feedback from me. All you have to do is basically what a lot of people did already is just put your work in the work in progress channel and then add a tag to it that says work in progress Wednesday, and then you're all good to go. And then I'll happily have a look at it in the stream. It keeps on changing as well. Oh. Okay, whatever. If I turn yellow again, we're just gonna have to deal with it. Walked in, got pastries. Oh shit! I see ya. That sounds good. I walked and I grabbed my weirdest snack that I love to buy almost every time, and it's like little party shrimps, like a little packet of party shrimps. I don't know why. Like I don't buy them every time, but like usually when I go outside, like that's what I buy. It's like my walking snack for some reason. Party shrimps, yes. I mean, they're called cocktail shrimps, I guess, but same thing. So yeah, anyway, welcome everybody. Welcome all the new people. Let me switch it over to the actual screen. And I've been having some issues with my display, so here we go. I think we're getting to the point where I might have to send back my tablet. I'm not sure. It keeps spazzing out. Like I'm actually happy that it's fine for the stream, but like it's doing some weird stuff. Really weird stuff. Hey, Rat One! Welcome, how are you doing? Let's see. Let's open the work in progress channel up as well so that I can actually have a look at who was first. So we got Eloy first. Why is okay? Oh no! I just wanna drag it. Thank you. Eloy first. Then we got Greg. Then we got Guillaume. Trying to keep a little bit of organization going up. So Populus next. One. We got and then Sheila, and then Sunny Day. Awesome. Right, while not saying good morning, I can't believe my eyes. You're right. You're so right, Sarah. But yeah, how is everyone doing? How has everyone's day been? Been a good one? Bad one? Full of personal work? I'm hoping. Full of creative stuff. Mine's been pretty good. I've been doing a lot of interesting backend stuff for Beyond Extent. So I'm doing way less personal work now. It's been a while since I opened up my medieval scene. Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun getting everything set up in the backend and like making my life easier in the future, hopefully. So yeah, been enjoying that. And then obviously we're here today for some feedback. So I would say let's dive in, right? We're gonna start out with Eloy. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look at the post that Eloy made on the channel. First post here. Thank you so much, Eloy, for posting your work. So I started this new project with the idea of remaking the old Violet Hold from World of Warcraft, Wrath of the Lich King. I've never played WoW. I mean, I played a little bit, so I have no actual context here, right? Like, I've never played the game myself. But you want to create this trim sheet, you want to create this environment with a trim sheet workflow. Okay. Cool. And then we got like the ref here as well. Yeah, you can kind of see that they use trim sheets for their stuff as well. Because like the geo kind of matches. Or they did titleables as well, that could also be an option. Let's say they did trim sheets to just make it easy for us. Because you can kind of tell. Because the geo kind of matches with the texture itself. So yeah, cool. Yeah, I would definitely say like an interesting choice, right? For like an environment. Like a lot of it is also obscured, so it's kind of hard to see what we're kind of looking at. In the original game reference, right? But you can kind of use that to your advantage and make that into like whatever you want, right? Or whatever you imagined it to be at that time. Let's have a look. Okay, we're kind of seeing some trims on the edges, right? Gonna see. Yeah, okay, so let's see. This one's good. Right, this one is good. On this one, you do have some issues where like the edges of the texture like don't match up with the edges of the geo. Right, so we have like a cut here, which should ideally be at this spot. So that this kind of, that the geo kind of matches the texture that you're gonna add onto it. Right, yeah. Right, like you're doing here, right? I think this might honestly be like a small hiccup. Because if you're doing it correctly here, I would assume that you know how to do it correctly here as well. What I would really look at is smoothing out this curve as much as you can, or like adding like especially like a little step in here, because this goes from like fully straight into like this, right? So you probably want to add like a little bit of smoothing here so that you can make this as smooth of a curve as possible, right? Still adhering to like the trims, right? So we can definitely smooth that out as well. Then I don't think this is done yet. This one is looking good. It's looking nice. What I would definitely have a look at. Oh, references have been a pain in the ass too obscure. Yeah, I think you almost have to go back in like and play it again, right? I don't know if that's even possible. I got no idea, but that would be like the best way of getting references. Or maybe you can find the artist that actually worked on the dungeon and look at their ArtStation page or their portfolio or whatever. That would be an interesting approach too. But yeah, I think the overall approach, right, where you're trying to approach it with trim sheets is actually really good. I would say the most important thing to still keep in mind is like the proportions of everything, right? Where these kind of decorative elements, they seem to have more weight to them than the ones that you have here. Like they kind of feel like a little bit more flimsy. Like I want them to be like chunky and big as like the original ones. The ground texture is looking pretty nice though. I do like that. Yeah, that's looking good. I think on this ground texture, an easy win is improving the background of it, right? Or like the grout. Because the tiles themselves look awesome, right? But there's not that much going on in like the grout itself, like the space between the tiles. Kind of just feels like really flat, so you can definitely like boost that up and have like a little bit more yeah, like a little bit more sandy or dust or dirt or whatever you want to fill it up with, right? You can definitely add some more detail in there. It's interesting. So you're doing most of it with trims, but then I'm assuming that these guys are unique, right? Because I can't really see them on the trim sheet here. Like they're not really represented, so I'm just gonna assume that those are like unique add-ons. Oh, you're using the same trim? Oh, you're just mapping the trim in that way? Okay. Yeah, you could do that for sure. There's also nothing wrong with it. Yeah. Yeah, you can do that. It's just like the reason why I'm so hesitant about it is because if you're doing like more ornate or ornamental pieces, sometimes it's a good idea to have them as unique, right? And to really make them stand out and like stand on their own 2 feet. But yeah, you can definitely do it this way as well. Actually, have a look. The reason why you probably want to have those as unique, right, is because now what we're kind of missing out on is like the feeling that this is carved into the stone, because that is going to be really tricky to represent that into a trim sheet. Like you then have to build in like edge damage into your trim sheet that you can like opacity out, or you add more geo to it or something, right? And you're basically making it more difficult. What I would think about is maybe it's worth doing that as like a unique piece and making it as like an ornamental decorative piece, just have it as a separate thing. Because trim sheets are nice, tidables are awesome, right? But they are gonna run into limitations of, oh, like I want to make something look really good because it's pulling the attention to itself because it's an ornamental piece. It might be worth considering that for here. If of course you want to go die hard trim sheet and like everything is going to be a trim sheet, that's fine. I think you're going to run into a barrier at some point where you will have to either do like a lot of decals or like do a lot of work to make it not look like a trim sheet anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like because you can't put like unique dirt or like unique stuff into it, right? So yeah, I would say definitely keep that in mind. It will end up looking repetitive, right? Oh, if you do like a unique piece, if it end up looking repetitive, then just do two, right? Do one. You could do one like pristine one and one damaged one, right? Because honestly, you're gonna run into the same thing. Like even now, right? Like they kind of look the same. You know, so I don't think repetition in some cases is a bad thing, right? Especially because again, like in some cases where you have something that needs to exude this feeling of longevity and like sturdiness and like for example banks, right? Or you see that a lot in like ancient Greek temples or something like that, like very stereotypical looks that I'm coming up with now. But like the pillars all kind of look the same, right? They all have their unique detail, of course, because over time, but like from a distance they all kind of look the same, and that's done to have this look of like what is it, like longevity is probably the best word that I can come up with now. Permanence is probably a better way to say it. Yeah, now we're kind of getting into the weeds of it, right? Yes. So then looking at your trim sheet, what you could look into is having a bigger separation between certain areas. And especially like the way that I build trim sheets up is if I look at the biggest surfaces, like I look at the biggest surfaces that I will need, I put them on the trim sheet, and then I look at the smallest surfaces that I need and I put them on the trim sheet. Like let's say the biggest surface on top, smallest surface at the bottom. And then I know that I only need to fill in the middle part, right? The reason why I'm saying this is because right now I might have the feeling, depending on the texture side of this, right, is that you're using this section to texture like a giant pillar here, which we're not looking at it up close, right? So we can't really go into the details of it. Oh wait, actually. Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, the texturing is also very forgiving currently, right? I don't know if you want to change that at all in the future. But you got to be careful that you don't scale this up too much compared to this one. Because that is using... So that is using this trim, right? And then the sides are using this trim. But what is going to happen? Like, let's say if this is the size of your pillar, right? Just to make it easy, what you'll have to do is double the scale of the size of your pillar. Because you're basically pushing, in an ideal world, like the textile density, right, where it like fits with the trim, you're kind of pushing that to like twice the size than it needs to be, right? I don't know if this makes sense. Like if this is the front of the pillar, so let's say front, and this would be the side of the pillar, it would take up this whole space, right? Ideally, because they're the same dimensions in like height-wise. However, because you don't want these cuts happening on the sides, you probably scale this up by double, right? And if you think about like scaling something up by double, that's a lot, you know? That's gonna introduce like pixelation, because yeah, you're scaling it up by so much. So be really careful with the scaling up of elements that are like really close to each other. That's also where the whole topic of textile density comes in, right? Like textile density in this case, especially with trim sheets, it's not about like a single number, but it's staying within the range of like a single number, you know? So when working with trim sheets, I would say something like, you got the base range, which is like scale of 1, you can go minus 25%, you can go plus 25%. Right? Something like that. It can be a little bit more, it can be a little bit less. That depends on you and like how forgiving you are, and like how forgiving the textures are. But let's say, let's use that as a baseline. If you then look back at this example where you have to scale the side up by 2, by a factor of 2, you know that that's outside of the range, which means that you then need to make like a new section on your trim sheet for it. I know it's a lot of technical talk, so I hope that I didn't lose you in that. Right, basically, you don't want stuff that's right next to each other to look pixelated comparatively to the other thing. That's basically what textile density all boils down to. But yeah, let's look at some of your questions as well. Should I maybe try to make 3 different unique modules on those pillars? I don't think you need to, right? It depends what kind of look you want to go for, because right now they look repetitive, right? But not necessarily in a bad way. So I think if you just make one module, you're gonna be fine, in my opinion. And then you can still decide like after a while where you say like, hey, I really want to do something cooler with like maybe the second level of like ornamental details, right? And you can change them up, right? And just add a new one. I don't think you need to go too crazy with like the unique amount. I think just having the one where you can really notice that it's like heavily carved into the stone, right? And like really go crazy with the detail on it. It could be really nice to just indicate that this is like a very crafted world. You know, very, very handcrafted. Hi Dinesh! I'm doing good, how are you? So yeah, that was like a whole bunch of talk about like the trim sheet itself, right? Trim sheets are not the easiest thing. So, and they don't need to be perfect either, right? So, let's say if the visual difference between the two is not too much, I guess you can leave it, right? But like in an ideal world, you want to have something set up where you put bounds on like how much you can scale up like certain parts, ideally, right? Yes, but yeah, honestly it's a good choice for an environment though. Like lots of reuse, like lots of little bits that you can add. What I would do, man, and this is a difficult one. Yeah, I guess if you're gonna set it up like this, then it kind of makes sense, right? Like the thing that I was gonna suggest is maybe think about like what the focal point of this environment is gonna be, right? But because right now, I mean, I didn't really look at the whole picture. Right now, it's kind of leading you all the way here to then have you go to this portal, right? Or like this portal probably. You have like the light coming in, guiding you towards the right. Would be cool, but to me, like it almost seems like it's missing something, right? Like it's missing like an amount of detail, or like something. Yeah, maybe you can. Oh, you know what would be cool? Maybe you can go more in depth with the amount of destruction that there is and the detail of the destruction as well. So because they were obviously limited by like geometry, right? So like this destruction is literally just like a really simple cutout. But you can make it look like it's really broken up, and maybe there's rubble on the floor and there's like bigger pieces, and you can really see how stuff fell apart, right? Like that might be an interesting approach to kind of compensate for how simple this stuff might look. That would be my approach, honestly. Because yeah, that's the thing, right? Like when you're doing a fan art piece like this, it's really cool to see, and like people really gravitate towards like seeing it brought up to the current standards, you know? So like if you can put in like a lot of time and like a lot of detail in those little areas, like yeah, that's gonna be like a win for this environment, I would say. So yeah, great stuff so far. I like what I'm seeing here. Keep up the work with the trim sheets. Keep up the work with the trim sheets. And also, oh, one last thing that I wanted to say. And this is probably like the biggest foundational thing that I was like immediately drawn to with this environment is keep the colors consistent. Like try to move them closer to each other on the spectrum. What I mean by that is you've got like a very saturated brown, like a very saturated brown floor, right? And then you have like gray pillars and like gray ornaments. Like what you probably want to do is like here, right? You would want to push them closer to each other so that they form one cohesive picture instead of being so contrasted against each other. Right? So that's definitely what I would try to do next, is play around, because you're getting to a stage where it kind of becomes clearer to see like the whole picture of the environment, right? So try to tweak those textures and like try to form like a cohesive picture with them. I hope that helped, Eloy. And great stuff so far. Keep it up. I'm really looking forward to seeing where this goes. Right. I really think that you picked like a really nice concept to go for, because it doesn't have a lot of detail, which is good, right? And you can focus on the detail, like for the actual destruction or whatever you want to do with that. So yeah, great choice. Great choice. And thank you so much for putting your work up here as well, Eloy. Thank you so much. Does help. Thank you so much. No worries. Let's have a look at some of the questions in the chat, right? Before we move on to this one. Could you add the method with textile density and trim sheets on the PDF? That's the thing. I understand textile density on props. I think, I'm actually not sure if it's on the textile density PDF, like the separate one that we have on the website, like the deep dive one. It might be in there, but it might be a good one to check out. It might be on either or. I can't really. Yeah, so where is it? So let me add that in the chat as well. So there is a section on like the textile density on the textile density PDF, like on our website, where it talks about like how to do this for trim sheets. Basically the same thing what I just explained. Like in a very condensed manner, right? So feel free to check that out. And that's exactly what that equation is all about too, Normad. To recap, like that equation where it's like you have your base scale of your trim sheet, right? Like where you, first of all, you just set it to textile density, so you know that that's the correct scale of that island. And then you map it to the closest island on your trim sheet. Ideally within a range of plus 25% and minus 25%. If you go outside of that spectrum, like the visual differences, they become, or like the amount of pixels that you're gonna add onto your UV island are not gonna be enough to really keep the consistency of the textile density, right? So you're basically adding a buffer of 25% like each way to kind of give you some leeway in scaling, but there has to be a border there, or like a limit to how much you can scale something up or down, because else it would completely break visual consistency. So that was like what that whole thing was about. All right, next up we got Greg. Greg is working on the entrance. So updated direction to make a small diorama. Reasoning, keeping every render 16 by 9. Add a bit of story, show designer materials, add some photo scan foliage. Okay. Yeah, I personally don't think that was needed. But if you want to do it, I mean, it's your project, right? And then Greg is also making some nice cobblestone with some moss in between. Oh, also, compared to last time, let me see. How are we gonna put this? Compared to last time, like the topology of the door itself looks way better. So great job on that, Greg. Like honestly, like this stuff looks really good. Like really optimized, really clean as well. So great stuff, especially the door itself. Like, oh my god, all those stupid edges that you didn't need, right? Like they're all gone. Love to see it. So great job on that. Topology, love it. And then this is a designer material. My first designer material that came from 100% my own knowledge of the software. Roughness isn't showing much, it's really low. Might add a bit more variation on the cobblestones. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell. I don't know what's happening here, but it seems like the maps aren't hooked up correctly or something like that, because the cobblestone is like really shiny. So yeah, I'm just gonna add that. So I don't know if you added the maps correctly to the material already or not. I have no idea. But it kind of looks like something went wrong here. Yeah, cool. This material is looking nice though. I think what you can do is maybe try and break up the moss with some dirt. Because right now the moss is like really like it just filled like the crevice, right? Like there's no variation in it. I think an easy win here could be that you basically just mask out like randomly like 50% of it, and then you just show like a little bit of dirt so that you get like a little bit more variation, right? I think that could be like a very interesting approach here, because now it's literally just like a 1 to 0, you know, you have either cobblestone or moss, and it would be cool to have like more layers and more complexity going on there. Like maybe not even 50%, right? Let's say like 25% or something. 25% dirt. Something different. Yeah. Yeah, it's good stuff. I like what you're doing with it. I'm curious to see how you're gonna expand it, right? Because it was always meant to be just a door before. So I'm curious how you're gonna expand it. It's yeah. Interesting that you decided to pick this one up. Any chance you can explain the door topology again? The best way to do that is to look at last week's stream, probably. Like I did like a thorough breakdown of overpaint on how to optimize the topology. You can find that in like last week's live stream. Yeah, that would be the best source. Yeah, not too much to say on this one, Greg. Yeah, I would say implement the material. Maybe look at the roughness map. I would say if those roughness, like the map that I'm looking at, you can definitely push that more up towards the white so that it becomes like a little bit duller, and then pick out like a couple of spots where maybe it's like it has rained or like water has collected or something like that, right? To maybe add like a little bit more contrast and variation. But yeah, I think the materials could definitely use a touch up, right? Especially if you're gonna like go ahead and make it into like a bigger diorama again. Like you can really push it. So yeah, quick one, but yeah, best of luck, Greg. Best of luck. And also, yeah, great job on this first material and designer. Like, I came 100% from my own knowledge of the software. This is looking awesome, though. You know, like this is great stuff. So I love what you're doing with it. Oh, and thank you so much for posting your work, Greg. Really appreciate it. And then we're gonna straight up move on to Guillaume. Hi, Guillaume. Guillaume has picked up his old project again. The Not Bureau of Control. So let's have a look. The materials are looking really nice. Probably my favorite one is gonna be the floor. Out of this selection, probably the floor is going to be my favorite one. So I love the floor. The reason why I like it is because it seems to have like the right amount of roughness, right? And there's also like slight variation between the tiles, but like not too much, especially when it comes to the slant and the rotation of the position. Like it feels like the roughness kind of breaks up nicely, but it still feels like a cohesive floor, right? So yeah, good stuff on that material. So I'll point out some issues with the other materials, right? And I think you know them, especially when we're looking at it from a distance. There's this one that becomes really apparent where you almost have like these repeatable frames, right? Like you almost have like a grid of like dirt that kind of shows up. And it really kills the tiling aspect of it. So I think what you could actually do with these three other materials, or maybe the two on the left, right? Because I think the top right one could actually work. But I think especially with the two on the left, you want to keep them more clean. And then push variation with decals that you add in the engine. And you really go to town with like the amount of decals and like how to make it look unique. Because honestly, when you're working with like big surfaces like you are in your environment, it's going to be really hard to get like any sort of tiling material to look good with so many tiles that you can see at first glance, right? So I would reduce the amount of dirt that you're adding into it. Like I would keep the dirt like very generic, right? And like very subtle. And then go in afterwards with some decals, or if you want to be fancy about it, maybe some world aligned material that like has like a couple of mask blending, like where the dirt is gonna appear, right? But honestly, like a manual approach, like decals could definitely work in this case as well. So I would definitely say like reduce the unique dirt. And then replace that with decals. Right? And that can also kind of apply to this one. I think this one is a little bit better, right? But you still see like the repetition of like this cloud, right? Like it's the same kind of cloud that kind of keeps reappearing. And that's, again, especially when working with like big surfaces like you are, that's going to be annoying to kind of see from your camera angle as well. So I would just keep the materials themselves like really simple, and then just build up like a dirt again, like in the engine. And then onto this one, which it's a little bit, so it is better in my opinion because the dirt is like more generic, right? So I don't think it suffers from like the same issues here necessarily, because like the dirt itself also has less contrast between it, right? Like this feels just like a really dirty material, where like these other ones feel like a clean material that has like dedicated dirt spots on it, if that makes sense. Right, so that's why this one works better. I will say that in the screenshot itself, right? What you'll have to do is make a couple of variations of these pillars where you just move the UVs like up or down, or like left and right, like a couple of sections, so that again you get like this like repeatable gray spot that keeps appearing on like the pillars, right? You kind of want to you kind of want to move that up or down so that you get like that variation between the pillars itself, right? And like it's super simple to do. You just move up your like UVs, like just all of it, like by half or like by 25 or something like that, depending on where the split needs to happen, right? But yeah, I would definitely look at this repeating pattern. But I think this one works really well though. Like, apart from the repetition that we just brought up, right? I think this one works really well. I think there's one thing that I wanted to say, and that's mostly in line with the original concept that you were making, right? Where it feels like it's not as light as you, well, maybe not as you, but like as the concept made it look like it was, right? Because you went for like a more dark feel. And I don't know if that's intentional, but maybe it could be cool if you dial that back a little bit. I will say back on this topic though. There's this really obvious like AO edge, right? It kind of looks like it's an AO edge because it's so uniform across like all the different grouts of like all the different tiles that you probably want to break that up a little bit. Because yeah, that looks too uniform at this point. Yeah, so that can be applied to these two. Yeah, man, I'm glad to see you back at it. It's been a while since I've seen this, so I'm glad that you're back at it again, and you're making some really good progress, man. So yeah, I would say keep at it, keep improving those materials, because I mean, the materials really carry the scene here, right? And add more stuff, add more unique details, like in decals or in the engine, rather than trying to make it all into the material, because that's not going to work. Right, so yeah, I would say best of luck, Guillaume, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of this. Thank you so much for sharing your work. Norma was asking tips to get better at problem solving while 3D modeling. Not getting stuck in a complex shape. I'm having trouble with complex props. So if you're getting stuck with complex props, you have to do less complex props. It sounds like such a stupid thing to say, but that's the thing, right? Like you gotta build up. You basically have to see it as difficulty level, right? You have to get used to like the difficulty level before you can move up to the next level. That's what I would say. But yeah, I would definitely say keep refining with like simple stuff, and then once you really got a good grip of that, like go on to like the more intermediate stuff and like build that up level by level. That's what I would say. Because it takes time. Like you can't rush to like the complex stuff immediately, because then you're gonna get so frustrated because you can't do the complex stuff yet that you're just gonna burn yourself out doing it. And you don't want to be doing that. Okay. Next one up is from Populus. Let's have a look in our chat over here. I mean, Populus wasn't really asking for any questions, so I'm probably not gonna say too much about this, right? Because they're not really asking for specific feedback. Let's see. Sculpted the texture for the wall. Definitely other pieces of the bridge. It's my first time actually sculpting material. In the following days, I hope to finish the whole bridge. Yeah, this looks good. I like the material that you textured here. I like it. I would say the main thing that you probably want to be careful with is having these darker spots. Right, like these very dark sections. There's actually a cool thing that you can do, right? And I would do this. I would personally do this in Substance Designer, because you have your sculpt, right? So you have like your tileable map here. What I would then do is just drag that in with all the maps that it comes with, and then blend that with a dirt or something like that, like a very simple dirt that you've made in Substance Designer, and then height blend the two based on the height map of this texture, and then you get like some really nice like dirt or like grout that comes out of it, right? Instead of only being the tiles, you get some variation in the grout as well, because it would be kind of nice to kind of have some like dirt coming up in the crevices, right? Where this stuff would be kind of filled up by it. And that's really super simple to do in Substance Designer, where you can just take like your height map that you've already made for this texture anyway, and you can use that to drive the blend between the texture, like the tile texture, and then the dirt texture. I wanted to keep it to ZBrush and Painter only, but that could be quite a good idea. I tried to reference Sea of Thieves as much as possible. Yeah, let's see how they do it then, right? Let's see. Let's see if we can quickly find something that's sort of in the same vein. It's going to be pretty tricky to find something, right? Let me actually scroll down here. I mean, that stuff was pretty good. Oh, let's see. Yeah, like even here, right? Like just blending it with vertex blending between the two is like a bunch of cool stuff that you can do with that. And that's mostly geo as well, I would assume. Yeah, there's definitely some geo in there. Yeah, but that's a cool thing, right? Like it doesn't have to be like dirt, like very noisy. It can also be just like sand or something like that, right? What is that, Port Merrick? Yeah, even here, right? Like just the plaster and like the tile blending. Pretty cool stuff how they blend that together. Yeah, because the plaster is something that doesn't come with like a lot of noise, right? So it's like a very, very easy on the eyes material, and then they blend it with like the tile to make it like stand out. And it's kind of cool to have the both in them in contrast, right? And they do that with like a little bit of vertex painting. And it just makes it like so much more interesting in terms of like materials, right? Like what you could actually do in yours while we're looking at this is you could almost do the same implementation where like you could almost have like all of this be plaster or something like that, right? So that it kind of fits like the pillars beside it, and then have like a little bit of the stonework be revealed underneath, right? And it's not gonna look like it's gonna be a harsh transition because you're gonna blend it quite softly, right? So you're gonna get like a nice transition between the two. It's it could be really cool. And then you can kind of use the same setup for the tower as well, right? And then build consistency between the textures, because if everything uses like the same kind of structure, right? Like you could, yeah, you can see that between all the buildings, like maybe, yeah, between all the buildings, like they're quite consistent, even though they change up. They probably change up like the color of the plaster just a little bit. Yeah, it creates a nice sense of consistency between everything. And then the good thing about that is that you don't have to blend it in Substance Designer anymore, right? But you can actually blend it in Unreal using Vertex Paint. Could be really cool. It depends on how much you want, right? Because you could actually have like really deep crevices and then kind of blend them out towards the edges with Vertex Paint, so that you have like plaster going into like very exposed rock where it's almost like falling apart, right? Because there's no interior material like keeping it together anymore. Yeah, I would definitely give it a try, man. Definitely give it a try. Because yeah, it's those details, right? Like where you blend stuff together and you put like the finishing touches on stuff, that's really gonna make everything feel like more cohesive than it is. You can then kind of use that to indicate, like, if you're gonna do like a curved bridge, right? Like a stereotypical curved bridge, you could even then like paint out the center of it where it's exposed stone, and then the sides of it are going to be sand in that case. Be very cool. The main thing is that their textures are all hand painted, so I never could have quite replicated it fully. I don't think they're hand painted, are they? I think they feel like it, but they probably use like just the same stuff that you're using. That it will just bake it down, I think. I don't think, I mean, I could be completely wrong here, right? But like from what I've seen just now, like based on those 5 minutes that I looked at it, because I've never played the game myself, I don't think any of that is hand painted. I think they make it feel really hand painted, but I don't think it actually is. Again, could be completely wrong though. Don't quote me on that. Yeah, but this is coming together nicely though. I like the little details, like the cracks on the edges look really nice. Looks really nice. Yeah, and then what you could also do to even like push this further, right? Like have like little decals, or like little dirt trims, where you push it into the floor. Can be either like decals or you could do something in the shader, right? With like runtime virtual texturing, where you can kind of sample that. Even though that doesn't really work great on vertical surfaces, I would just go for like a dirt trim. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like that's the thing. That's where the magic happens to me, right? Is where everything kind of blends together, and you can see that the dirt is not just grass, or like the landscape is not just grass in this case, but it's actually like someone tried to like reinforce the bridge being planted into the stone by like smooching up the dirt a little bit, right? So that you get like this little curve near the edge where the landscape comes up a little bit. Like it's all those small details that are really gonna blend everything together and make it look like it's a cohesive picture. I mean, I know you're not there yet, right? Because you're focusing on the bridge, but just want to say that all this stuff that we talked about today is all gonna massage this together. So yeah, keep it in mind. Give it a nice massage. Yeah, this is a good job though. Like having all these tiles like slightly offset. Good job. Good job. Yeah, I love your little bridge. Gotcha. Going to definitely implement something like that in the finishing touches. Yeah, exactly. Like I know you're not there yet, right? I just wanted to bring it up to make sure. But yeah, keep on working on the bridge. Keep it up. And thank you so much for sharing your work, Populus. I'm looking forward to seeing how this is all gonna progress, buddy. It's looking awesome. Yeah, especially for your first time doing something like this, right? Where you sculpted like your own texture. This came out great, man. Came out great. Great stuff. No worries. All right. Next up, we got Route 1, who is taking a break from their Viking scene and is actually doing our solo challenge. So we had like a little solo challenge running this month where it was I think it's Japanese Japanese storefront was one of them, right? I think it was travel to Japan was like the theme of this month. So yeah, Route 1 is doing like a little Japanese storefront. Cool. So there were a couple of questions in his thread, so let's have a look. I'm working on the materials and planning to develop a trim sheet specifically for the stools. I'm seeking feedback in the following areas. General feedback regarding the concept and the most effective way to utilize the stylized style. Okay. Yeah, let's start there. The most effective way to utilize the stylized style. I'm thinking that you wanna translate the scene into 3D with that style as best as you can, right? And that's why this question comes up. Am I understanding that correctly? Because, man, I gotta say, like a lot of the style, especially this one, it relies on the jittering of the edges, right? Like the edges are like really imperfect. So if you want to do something like that, you're probably gonna have to look into some post-processing effects or like post-processing filters that can maybe replicate you doing something like that, right? Or you have to go like the more traditional stylized route where, I mean, we just had to look at like the CFTs stuff, right? Maybe do it in that sort of way. But if you really want to stay faithful to like this kind of style and this kind of look, you're going to have to do some digging into like, and I'm trying to think about the filters, but like there's a set of filters that you can program in Unreal. I can't think of the name. Like it's a very complex name as well. It was like the It could be Hara filters or something like that. They're basically filters where you can go in and you have to program them, right? So it's not really accessible for like, well, someone like me, let's say an artist, right? But that could be an option because it you can really go crazy and like make like very specific effects. But yeah, what you can also do is I'm thinking, right? So the first thing that comes to mind is the work from I think it's Rachel Noy. And she did so she did this one. Right? And that is literally, if I remember correctly, yeah, like that is literally painted on top of it, right? If I'm understanding correctly, where she actually did watercoloring and then scanned it in. Like I think it works something like this, right? I'm not 100% sure, but I think if I would do something like this is I would unwrap everything. I would print out the unwrap on like a page and then watercolor on top of it. And then scan that back in. And then I have my textures in like the full colors, right? Obviously this is going to be tedious and slightly annoying, but it's going to give you like a really unique effect. So, I mean, you can see that here, right? Like it's a very unique look. It could also be an approach that you could take. Let's see. Oh, yeah, she didn't even print them out. So she painted the texture from scratch in Photoshop as if I was using watercolors. Okay, so it wasn't even that crazy. But yeah, like that's the approach. The same approach still stands, right? Where you're going in and you paint everything super manually. I will say, if you're not a painter at all, or if you're not doing like any sort of manual stuff, this is gonna be tricky. Get that looking right. It could be like a really cool experiment. So I would definitely give it a try. Yeah, it's gonna be tricky. But this is a cool approach. I'll link it in the chat as well. Everyone can check it out too. Me immediately wanted to print out a UV sheet to paint, even though I'm nothing to work on. Yeah, it's an interesting workflow, honestly. So yeah, and I hope that helps on like your first question. Honestly, like you're gonna have to do like a lot of digging yourself. Like I hope that the two things that I brought up are like effective, right? But yeah, I've never really done anything like this. I kind of wanted to do something like this as well, and my gut thing was I was also just I started painting in Photoshop. Maybe in a different project, haven't painted in years. I mean more like a general stylized, but trying to keep that look, if you know what I mean. You're gonna, if you want to keep this look, man, you're gonna have to paint. I mean, you could try to replicate it, right? Like with filters or something like that in Substance Designer or like Painter. Maybe that works. I guess you can make that work. Yeah, but that's where you're gonna, I think the best case in that situation is take a small prop, like a chair, right? And do a benchmark. See what you need to do, and like if you can find out like a way that you can get really close to the style with filters, and then once you nail that on one prop, replicate that on all the other stuff. Because yeah, I don't have any specifics to point to. Suggestions for incorporating various lighting conditions at different times of day. I would say don't. Not yet. Right? Like, you're gonna struggle making one look good. I think get that done first before you start looking into different lighting scenarios. I mean, that's what I would say. Because like if you wanna know some ideas, you could maybe do like the thing folded up, right? Where like the thing is closed, where the thing is open, like maybe in the morning where they like started cooking. But I would definitely just, if you're really thinking about like replicating the art, start there before you start thinking about like the post processing and doing like different lighting scenarios. Because I'm happy to give you ideas on that, but let's discuss that at a later time, I think. And then assessing if the trim sheet requires further improvement. Let's see. So yeah, you have the trim sheet here. Should I look at different games instead and try and make something similar? No, not necessarily. Unless you really want to. Right? Like this is a, I mean, I appreciate that you're coming to me with these questions, but that's something that you really need to figure out, right? Because I don't know what you gravitate towards. So that's something that you'll have to figure out, and like what kind of style that you want to infuse this project with. Right? So I would say yes, look at games, right? Like look at stuff that you like and maybe something will spark. But I feel like you picked this image that we're looking at in the top left because that style kind of inspired you, right? So I don't know. That's a question that would be good for you to try and answer. Right one. Because yeah, that's going to be very personal. So yeah, back to the topic here. So assessing if the trim sheet requires further improvement. Let's see. I mean, the main thing that really stands out to me right now is the contrast between these two things, right? Like the contrast between the darker paneling and like the lighter paneling. That's currently two different. I also feel yeah, like really looking at the paneling here, right? Where you have this panel is made up of 4 panels, but with you it looks like it's one big section. It would be cool to have those like separations in there as well. That would be a cool one. And then like the little trim at the bottom. Like the little trimmy boy. Hey Lloyd, evening. Panels, and then you got this little trim. But I think the rest of it, yeah, makes sense. I would honestly, because you mentioned that you wanted to make a trim sheet specifically for the stools, I would honestly not do that. Because you could almost make like everything that's wooden here, right? Like make that into like its trim sheet. I mean, you've already got like most of it in there, right? Like, oh wait, so how are you doing this? Let's see. It's kind of hard to tell, but I think you're beveling these, right? So if you're beveling that, then that's fine. The reason why I'm taking such a hard look at that is because you see that there's like a little color variation between the sides and like the top, right? Like usually the finish would also be different between like a flat larger surface and like a small side surface, right? Like you would see the wood grain run into like a different direction. Or these might even be like finished ends, right? Where they're sanded off and they give like a different vibe. So I would probably try to build that in as like a little section here, right? So you would have the top and you would have the side. And then yeah, you could even cut that in here because the aspect ratio of these, right? Like the size of these chunks, like they're all very consistent. And I feel like this is wider. You can probably condense that a little bit. What was the other thing that I wanted to bring up? So, oh yeah, and then you can add that little trim down here. Right, so this is the bottom trim. All the way at the bottom here, and maybe you make that like slightly rounded or something, right? Like where it's not just flat, but it's like slightly rounded, has like a different feel to it. Could be cool, or maybe you do something different with that. I'm trying to see for like opportunities where we can infuse it with like a little bit more than just like tileable. You know? Like I'm trying to see if we can infuse it with something more. And like little bits of like slight variation to kind of break it up. And then you probably wanna do something like here as well. Like with the top of the roof where they still have like some really cool stuff that adds like a little bit of silhouette like at the top of the roof, right? But with yours it still has a cool silhouette because you have like all these interlinking things with the bamboo. It could still be nice to have that. Like little section going over the top of it. Might be something to try, and then if it doesn't work, you can still leave it off, right? Yeah. Oh, yes. What I originally wanted to say is now we just talked about like all the bits of the main what is it? Like the main stall itself, right? But actually what you can also do is just include these little sections of like wood as like a little trim somewhere. Because there's only a couple of them. So I wouldn't make like a separate trim for like the wooden stools. Right, so this would be the poles and the stool legs. Right? And then the majority, I think all of the wood would then be just focused into this one trim sheet that you have here. And then you can go a little bit crazier with like the rest of it. Maybe this is also worth adding, like little metal. That's a question mark. That could also be, maybe you add that as like a unique thing here, right? Because you seem to be having some space here, so 2 variations maybe. Add that in there. You're good to go. And then you can focus like you're doing already, right? Like a leather material for like the top part of the stool. Could be an interesting thing to put more of your focus into, right? A leather material for the top part of the stool. That's this one, right? Yeah. Oh, and then identifying additional elements to include aside from the concept. Oh, that's more like, yeah, how to expand this, right? Um. I mean, this would be like a fun one, you know? Yeah, sorry, I'm not going to try and replicate the art style like hand painting, but more like Mark Puente Japanese storefront on ArtStation. Still new to stylized. What is it, Mark Puente? Mark Puente ArtStation. Talking about this one, right? Yeah. Yeah, looks cool. Cool looking style. Very simple as well, right? Like very simple in textures and shapes, and like there's not too much detail going on in here. Which actually brings me to your texture for the top of the chairs. I would maybe even go with not having a tileable, right? But like doing it in like a unique way where you like sculpt like all the details on top of it. And like really put some nice details on like the edges and the borders and the trims. Instead of just doing a tileable. Because the tileable is not gonna cover for the sides, right? So the tileable is literally only good for like the top surface. And then you usually would have like a little ledge of fabric. And this would be like just like a bit of folded cloth underneath the chair, right? But that doesn't have like you have the you could have these like at the top, right? But you're not gonna have these like bolts on like insets like on the sides. So I think you're gonna have to do some work there anyway to either, if you still want to do a trim, which I don't know, like would be kind of a waste. I would love to see like unique detail in there. But if you still want to do that in the trim, then yeah, you'll have to build that into the texture somehow. But I would definitely recommend doing that unique and like putting in like a bit more time, making them look really good. But yeah, let's go back to this though. So expanding from the concept, right? Like your last question, I could definitely see. This is gonna be clearer if you look for references, right? Or if you do some digging into like where they are and like what the location looks like. But like maybe some smaller bits of like garbage. And garbage doesn't have to be a lot, right? But like small and subtle. Like a dropped fork, right? Or like a dropped what is it? Fuck. One of those sticks that you eat with. God damn it. Chopsticks. Could be cool. Just like little bits of sprinkles, like maybe one or two, right? Like very simple stuff. But I wouldn't really go too far, you know, just have it with like a little diorama underneath it, like a little base underneath it. Think about how people interact with the space and what they would be doing, and then infuse some of those items just like underneath it. That's what I would do. Because yeah, you don't have to do that much, right? Like it could honestly like even be cool Be cool. It depends on how you want to present it, right? But I can see something working in the same style as this person does, right? It's like a white background, like almost no floor, and then just have the thing there in the middle, right? And have it just be by itself, like very, very graphically presented, like in a very graphical manner. It'd be cool. That depends on you as well, right? How far you want to extend it, like what you need to do. Like you could put like a Kirin crate next to it. Those are like very stereotypical, right? Like I think it's like Japanese beer. Think about what they would need for like running the shop too, right? So what does the shop need? Those are like two questions that you can ask, right? And then who comes here? And how do they interact? Right? Like those two questions you can actually get like a lot of ideas out of to then put on the sides of it, right? Like a little beer crate, like a little box of deliveries, like a little stuff on the floor that people dropped because I don't know, maybe it's late at night, maybe some came back from like what are they called? They have a specific name where you go for drinks with your bosses, right? Like it's a work venue, but you're still grabbing some food, but you're like slightly drunk, so you drop your chopsticks. Like that kind of stuff, right? Like you can make like really interesting stories there and then turn those stories into prop ideas. It's kind of cool. I was watching a video on someone walking around Tokyo and they have adverts playing and the lighting was cool to try and replicate. Yeah, you could do that. You don't even need the billboard, right? Like you would basically have, I think this works. So you would basically download like, what would you do? Like just download like random Japanese advertisements as like a movie file, put them on a large plane, and then let Lumen project that light onto your scene. Could be cool, right? And then Lumen kind of fills it up because it's projecting like the lighting from that large billboard onto your scene. That would be awesome. It could be like a very cool trick. I think there was I can't remember the name of the artist, but there was a person that did this when he was making like a rain shader. And obviously like rain works really beautiful with reflections and like lighting like that. But it was really cool to see that it had like puddles and it was raining inside of the puddles, but basically it was lit up by like Japanese advertisement boards behind it. Yeah. I would always look for like the simplest implementation and then build on top of it. Maybe a thunderstorm. A thunderstorm could just be, well, I wouldn't. I mean, you could do that. Yeah. You definitely could. That's all up to you, right? Whatever direction you want to take it. I think the reason why I was so hesitant is because then you want a thunderstorm, you want a puddle on the floor, but you also probably want like a little bit of rain, and then you want like a proper rain shader, and then you also need like the water to look good. And what are you going to reflect with the water? Because like then it would look ridiculous if you have nothing to reflect it from. You know, like it just becomes so much bigger just because you want to have a little bit of mood, where the mood could literally be set by like a little bit of music, right? Or like a little bit of ambiance, like just sound, right? Like a thunderstorm in the distance or something like that. And maybe it's after the rain, right? If you don't want to do rain, maybe you could do like a puddle gathering, but you can still hear this thunderstorm as it's moving away from the scene, you know? Like, it can still be moody without like all the technical and artistic implementations. Could be cool. But I have a week for the challenge and getting it to look nice, and then after that, adding our station and adding more to the scene. Yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, the challenge technically runs for this month, right? But you can keep working on it for longer if you wanted to, right? So that's totally up to you. So yeah, I hope that helped. Thank you so much for sharing your work and all the questions, right one. Good luck. And then yeah, keep it up. I mean, if you wanna get it done in a week, I guess we're gonna be talking about it next week again, right? All right, next up, Vibu is working on, or is starting to work on, like Mansions of India. There's only like a little bit of concept. Appreciate feedback on my modular kits. I've marked them for your review, but if you think there's an alternative approach, I'm open to suggestions. Yeah, so I had a look at this before the stream, and this is very chaotic. I'm gonna be honest, like all these numbers all over the place, like I can't really keep track of like the overall picture, you know? Like I see like a lot of different things and like a lot of different things that you've like encircled, but I have, because there's so many different pictures, I don't even know how they're all gonna fit together. You know what I'm saying? Because like I can say that, like, yeah, you have pillars, you have wall pieces, you have like these little sections up here, right? It all seems to make sense, but it's really difficult to tell because it's just a splatter of images and it's not one cohesive picture, right? Like usually with a breakdown, what you would do, or like to make it cohesive, right, is just have the one image that hopefully has all the things. And then if it doesn't, maybe do like a little bit of an overpaint. But yeah, I'm sorry, people. This is it's a little bit hard to keep track of. But I'll say that the stuff on here looks reasonable, right? Like you have the pillars, you have like all the trims, you have like the little bit of roof sections. You have like these roof sections as well. But yeah, I think you're missing the bigger roofs, right? Tim, it's just that they were from different mansions. Yeah, what I would do, so if you want to keep it clear, right? Like if you want to present this in like a cohesive manner, do like a little bit of cutouts and say like, hey, look, what would be a good example? So let's imagine that this is a corner that you want to build, right? I know that that's not your intent, but let's go with it for now. And then you say like, hey, I don't like the top of this. Photoshop, like just really quickly, right? Like take the roof from that you think it looks cool and put it on there. Right? Because now, yeah, it's kind of hard to keep track of. But yeah, again, like all the stuff that I see here kind of makes sense, right? You have like your little sections of the stairs. I would say you're definitely going to have more pieces in the staircase because you have going up to the first floor, like the ornate staircase, and then you have like the second staircase, but you don't have like the corner pieces, right? Where you're doing the rotation back to the second set of stairs, or the T-split where you go up the first set of stairs and then you split off into the two separate sections, right? And then if you don't want to have a T-split, like that needs to be a separate section as well, right? Where it's not a T, but it's actually like an L section where it moves onto like number 11. So yeah, there's gonna be a, this is normal, right? I'm not saying that this is like an issue that you missed it, but yeah, you're gonna encounter like a lot of things where you think that they work, but they're not gonna work as soon as you start building it. So for example, you want to go more into detail for the staircase, right? Like what you have with your staircase currently is you have like section 1 and you have section 2, right? So this is number 12. This is number 11. Right, but there's no, let me see. There's no connecting bit here, right? So you don't have this corner. So this corner is missing. And then also, like, how does that corner connect to like the main piece? That's also missing, right? And then maybe in some cases, because the way that you got it set up now is that this would also be number 11, right? And then this would be missing as well. What if in some cases you have number 11 and number 12? Then you have this corner piece, but you don't actually want this to be a T-split like you have here, but you just want it to be like a connection like this. Are you gonna account for that? Because then maybe what you could do is just flip this section, right? That might work, or it may not work depending on how you build it, right? Because ideally between a staircase you want to have like a little bit of space between the going up and the going down, because else the railing parts, like if you have like a railing on your stair, like if you have them like almost on top of each other, those railing pieces are going to intersect, right? I'm going for a T. Yeah, that makes sense, right? Because that's the one that we're seeing here. But then for a modular kit, you have to think about the opportunities why you're building a modular kit. Gotta go back to actual work. Thanks again, Tim. I pick up a lot of great tips watching. That's awesome, second favorite. We'll catch you next time. So yeah, what I was explaining, Vibu, is that you gotta think about like the reasons why you're creating a modular kit, right? And like how broad or complex you want to go. Because sometimes you're trying to account for like a bunch of stuff that you're not really gonna use, right? So in your case, if you're only gonna do T sections, right? If this is gonna be like a unique, even better. Let's say if this is gonna be like a unique staircase that it's only gonna be used in this configuration, why do you even have number 11 and 12, right? Where it can be like a unique thing. Right? Because if you, so let's look at this again, right? So if we look at another configuration, right? If we have this configuration, what else could you make with it that is going to use the same pieces, but is going to be a different configuration? Right, so in that case, if the answer to that question is no, where you're not going to reuse them, you might as well just combine them into one piece, right? Unless you're going to reuse them for something else, right? But then you have to think about like a different configuration. So let's say this is number 12. And then this is number 11, right? This could be like an additional configuration, right? Where you would still have the corner here. Oh my god, my question marks are out of control today. Right, so that could be a configuration, but I don't know if you're gonna need that necessarily. Oh, and also a sneaky thing here if you're doing something that's like a 45-degree corner, a 45-degree corner is never going to be the same length as this. So you probably want to make this into like a new piece as well. Because a corner piece, like a 45-degree corner piece, is going to have different attachment points to the other components in the modular kit. Again, you're gonna figure this all out as you're building it, right? So because that's the best thing that you can do with a modular kit is keep testing as you're building it. And then you're gonna discover like a whole bunch of stuff as you're building it on the fly. But yeah, like in these cases, like a 45-degree corner is gonna be different on the grid than like a 14. A 14. I did make it trim for the staircase. Would love to get your thoughts on that. Yeah, sure. Let's keep moving on. Courtyard trim. Wait, so where are these colors coming from? Okay, so that's that one. That's that one. That's the bottom one. And then this is that, right? That red is over here. That thing is over here. Oh, I see. So that thing is over here. And where's this one? No, it's all good. I'm trying to decipher it. Where's this green one though? Am I just... I think you missed that one. Wait, did I miss it? Yeah, this color is missing, right? It's the steps. Steps. Oh. These ones. They're a different color, Vib. How should I have known? Okay, cool. So these are all gonna be the same trim sheet, right? Or sorry, not the same trim sheet. These are all gonna be the same asset, right? Because these three different pictures are gonna be... So yeah, let me make sure that we got this right? Like I want to make 100% sure. So picture 1, picture 2, and picture 3 are gonna be one asset, right? Yes. Okay, cool. Thank you. So, okay. Yeah, that means 2 trims, right? Okay, so first of all, if we're doing 2 trims, in this case, if it's going to be used on one asset, combine them in one texture. You can actually have like a 2K texture by a 1K texture. So you would just combine both of them, right? And that makes it, just from like a readability and like loading in standpoint, right? Like you're only going to load it in when the staircase is visible, so might as well just put them together in one. I think that makes it like more readable, more easily to adjust and all that stuff. Let's see. Then on trim itself, will I have the texture resolution in that case? Oh, sorry, like the dimensions were just like you use your dimensions, right? Like you use your texel density. This is just an example that you can use. I'll make it a little bit clearer. Thank you for the questions, by the way. So you can use a 1x2 texture, right? So my example was like a 1K by 2K, but it can also be 2K by 4K. I wouldn't go higher than 4K because that's getting ridiculous. But yeah, what I would say here is you got two big chunks, right? So you got this big chunk and this big chunk. I would make that one. I would definitely make that one. Because again, like this is just slightly different, right? So we might as well reuse this. Because the difference is not that big, right? And no one's really gonna trip over that. Or what you could also do, I'm giving you a bunch of options here, right? Trying to keep it open-minded. Because you are probably missing, or maybe that's this section, right? Where you have like empty space. Because that empty space is currently not on your trim, unless if it's this part. So what I would do there is I would definitely yeah, I know the feeling. Like that's the reason why I bring it up, because I forgot that in my trim too. So I would yeah, make that plain wood, and then I would also add that plain wood up here instead, and then leave all the details for the side, right? Because in a game scenario, no one's gonna care to look at the underside of a stair, right? So I would just plan for this to be plain wood, and then use that same plain wood on the staircase itself as well. So I would add that here, and then that means that we have like a bunch of open space now, right? Or maybe the way that I would probably organize it, right, is all the big stuff, all the small stuff, right? So the plain wood, we're getting into the nitty-gritty now, right? Like the plain wood would probably be here. And then that is like the balustrades. Yeah, you can do a lot. You can do a lot more with trims as well, now that I'm looking at it. So yeah, we kind of got the big stuff figured out, right? Where you could even replace, like this is also plain wood, right? Like the blue stuff. That can also just be the same kind of wood, right? And then you just bevel the geometry to kind of get those nice bevels that you have on here, and then you're good to go again. So you can just use that plain wood for like all different dimensions, and you just bevel it. Yeah. And then what I would do is look at more forms of reuse. Like, and see what is really needed versus what you already have. I would probably, what I would do for the next steps, right? Because I think the rest of your trim sheet is actually in like a good state, right? All the other stuff kind of makes sense. What I would then look into is make it really quick, right? Like don't care about the details, don't care about like going sculpting. Like maybe even what you could do is cut out sections like from images, paste them onto the trim where you want them to be, and then try playing around with that trim to see if you have like all the things you need to make the staircase. Because that's going to help you better understand how you need to make a trim sheet, or like how you need to use the trim sheet to make the assets, right? Because I can guarantee you that there's going to be a moment where you're like building this intricate staircase and you're like, oh, I forgot about this, right? And then it's good to be in that space when you haven't spent like, let's say, I don't know, like a couple of days trying to make the trim sheet look really good, because it's still in a block out stage, right? You can still push and pull and change stuff up. And it's better to find out those issues earlier than later. Trust me on that one. Hey Aladdin! Hey man, I was listening to your podcast all day when I'm working on Spotify. Thanks for the amazing information about the industry. Oh, thank you so much for popping in and saying that, Aladdin. That's so awesome. Glad you're enjoying it. Yes. So, Pibhu, like a lot of trim sheet talk, but I hope this makes sense. So yeah, like a little recap, I would definitely try and get this stuff in as quick as possible so that you can kind of play around with it a little bit. And then you're going to find out that there's going to be stuff missing, or that stuff that there is going to be things that you're going to be using, but you're only using them in like 1 or 2 cases. And in those cases, it might actually be better to use it for something else. You mentioned about the 45 wall piece in the kit. Can you elaborate more? I'll elaborate by sending you an awesome tutorial about this. If I can find it. Oh, there it goes. From Jessica Helgeson. So, how to use a grid. This is an amazing tutorial. I want to give like a shout out to Jessica for this kind of stuff. Like, this is a great tutorial to showcase like how to align stuff to the grid, and like how to set it up in Unreal, and what it means to make like different pieces, and how you snap stuff together, and then also making like staircases, 45-degree corners, you know, like all the stuff is like really handy laid out. Because yeah, like this is the section that I was talking about, right? Where if you want to have these 2 sections, hold on, let me see. Where's my mouse? So if you want to have these 2 points aligned to the grid where it still becomes snappable for all the rest of the pieces, it has to be longer than the standard piece of a tunnel. Because it's snapping to diagonals instead of like straight pieces. Yeah, I'll share this tutorial. This is awesome. This is awesome. So let's go to my chat. There you go. Yeah, that's an awesome read. Like I learned a lot from that as well. I mean, I've done like so many modular kits, and like I can tell you that, I mean, this is my understanding, right? Like when I was making it, I thought that a 45-degree corner was just like, oh, it's just a straight piece that I can just like rotate, right? But as you do that, and then you wanna, let's say you make a corner, right? Like you want to do in your staircase, you're gonna notice that the snapping doesn't work, and you might be tempted to turn off snapping and to manually move it into place for that wall piece. But that means that every other piece that you want to attach to that piece is also no longer snapping to the grid, and that's when the whole grid kind of falls apart from that point. So yeah, basically, modularity disaster. That's what it comes down to. So yeah, gotta keep that in mind. Yeah, honestly, like Okay, to go back all the way to the beginning, right? Before I said that this was kind of messy to look at. The other thing that I also really noticed about this is that you're doing a really good job at like planning, which is like almost already way more than I've done, let's say, and like I see a lot of other people do, right? So keep this up. I think the issue here is more with like how you present the work to someone else, because I think in your head it makes sense, right? But especially if you're doing like in a mentorship, right? Like if you want to present this in a cohesive picture, try to take some of the hints that I said in the beginning, because that's going to help you a lot. And then this awesome breakdown is going to be even more clear once you do it. So yeah, great stuff. I know the importance of pre-production, so I went OCD, sorry. No, that's the thing that I said, right? Like that's a good thing. Like I'd rather see someone like go full crazy when it comes to like pre-production and like going into all the details where like, hey, look, this is a piece that I want to this is a piece that I want to use and it connects with this piece, blah blah. It just needs to be clear, right? Like it needs to be clear. By the way, can you share your Discord link? Yes, I can. It's gonna be it's through Patreon, right? But you can get access through our website. It's in the website link. Thank you so much for asking, Aladdin. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing your work, Vibu. We're gonna move it on up to Sheila, because this is turning into a long session. Thanks, Tim. No worries. No worries. Got an awesome update for y'all from Sheila's work. This is coming along nicely. I love the stuff that I'm seeing here. I'm gonna let you do what you're doing, Sheila. Like, I like what you're doing. I will give like a couple of small pointers maybe, but I like where this is going, honestly. Oh, hi Sheila, you're in the chat. Oh, Andrea has to go. Thanks for the stream, Tim. We'll have to watch the rest tomorrow. Have a good night, all. Have a good night, Andrea. Talk to you later. So yeah, back onto this piece. I like what the foliage is doing, right? Like the foliage is definitely like the thing that kind of breaks the piece up, right? Because a lot of it is just stone, and now we have like a lot of green coming in. So this is looking freaking amazing. Oh, I didn't pick your last update because I think you made the foliage a little bit darker. Sorry, I'll bring that up as well so that we can get the last one. Yeah, it's looking good. Looking real nice. Is there anything that you want me to give feedback on, Sheila? You changed the texture and the lighting a bit? Yeah. Oh, and maybe the lighting. Okay, let's see. I didn't really pay too much attention to the lighting. Let me compare the two. Oh, I see. Yeah. It's less heavier in the shadows now. Yeah, lighting is an interesting one because I do like the previous one, right? But that comes with the caveat that I'm always a bit bigger of a fan of like more contrast in the lighting. So don't take that for anything. That mostly depend on you. But yeah. I like the stuff that we're looking at. I think it's just gonna be a case of keep this up, right? Because I'm liking what I'm seeing. I'm seeing like the thing that I like the most about this is that I can see that all the foundational pieces are in place already, right? Like you have the tileable for the stones. You have the stones that are kind of broken up. The foliage is coming in now. I think you're even doing like a little bit of, yeah, vertex blending here as well, which is also impacted by a height map. as I can see. So yeah, keep on tweaking, keep on refining. Unless you want something, you want me to look at something, right? Then I'll be happy to give you some feedback. But I think I'm just curious to see what it's going to be next week. You know, I love what I'm seeing today. So I don't have too much to add, Sheila, this week. Hi, Eloy. How are you today? I'm doing good. Thank you so much. Sheila was struggling a bit to have the brick stack texture stand out, so I changed the lighting and the texture, but I'm not sure I did it right. Do you think before was better? Oh, okay, that's a good question. Let's actually directly compare the two then, right? Let me just get this one in. Wait, which one is it? This one. I'm gonna see if we can break it down a little bit, right? Because this is a comparison. So we have we do have, let's see. So this is the latest one, right? Latest and old. I also wanted to ask if it's not good to have two-directional lights in the scene. No, I would generally try to avoid having two-directional lights in the scene. Why are you adding a second directional light? I think if you know the answer to that question, I'll give you tips on how to solve it instead. Because I think what you're trying to do is maybe add more light to some of the darker areas, potentially. But normally, like a directional light, you kind of have to look at it like it's the sun, right? And if you have two directional lights affecting your scene at the same time, it's going to be like really messy and like really difficult to control as well, because a lot of the other stuff, like the exponential height fog or some of the other stuff, is kind of based on one light instead of two. So it wouldn't even work if you have the second one in most cases. So yeah, back to what you're saying, right? So I'll point out the stuff that I like in the comparison here. I like the older one because it feels less flat when it comes to the lighting. And also it feels a bit farther away from the white spectrum of the light. Which, the further, like, the brighter you make your light, the further you're pushing all the values of your textures, or like, what is it, like the perceived value, like how they look, closer towards, like, the brighter end of the spectrum, right? And if you then have, if you push it too far, that's when you introduce clipping. That's when you can't really... That's when you can't really notice any small differences between the highlights and like the midground on like a white object, for example. So you got to be really careful about that you don't push it too far and that you make like stuff look like really flat. You know, like what could be like an example? I mean, it's not really happening here that much, or not yet. Right? But that would be an example of when you know that your lighting has gone too far, when you can't really notice the subtle differences anymore in like very, very white textures especially. But what I like about the right one as well is also the color of the foliage, where it feels like more lush and more greenish, right? And it kind of fits into the tone of the scene a bit better. Where on the left one, yeah, it just feels like the light itself is very white, and then you have like green. Whereas on the right, you have like a little bit of yellow coming into the scene as well. From probably the directional light in this case. So that's why I prefer the older one compared to the newest one. I hope that makes sense. Because I think your lighting is actually pretty good, you know? I think what you wanted to do is keep on working with this lighting until you have like a lot of the textures in. Because what's going to happen, especially with Lumen, right? It's going to react on the base color values of your textures, and then it's going to infuse that into the global illumination. So let's say in this case, right? If the ground of your scene was black, like it's gonna make the scene look way darker than it is because it's not gonna reflect as much light from the ground anymore. So I would keep on going, keep the current light. You don't even have to go back to the previous one, right? But like keep in the current iteration of light until like everything is kind of textured, and then maybe start tweaking it a little bit more. That would be my suggestion. Man, lighting is not easy, as it seems like I still struggle with this as well. Yeah, it is not easy, especially because yeah, we want to make pretty stuff, right? Like we want to make environments rather than light them. I feel like that's always been my struggle point as well. But yeah, you gotta bite the bullet, you know, like you gotta bite through and like make, because if you, this is the thing, right? Like the presentation and like especially the lighting part is so important when it comes to your environments, that you cannot afford to not light it in a proper way, because it's gonna make your whole scene look shit. Yeah, so Sheila, let's back up a little bit, right? Onto the question of having two directional lights in your scene. Because the wall texture is on the opposite side of the light, and I make it flat. And that makes it flat. What is an example area of that? Oh, you mean this area, right? Like this area, for example, because it's in shadow? Yeah, okay. So what you can do there is, man, this is such a tricky one, because this is setting up like a bad precedent because it's not in line with PBR correct, but I'll still explain it anyway, right? Especially because yours is like more stylized anyway. What I would do is I would take your base color, I would add in your AO map as well, and then I would multiply, or well, how would I set it up? Like I would just add them together. So it depends on how you want to do that, right? If you're texturing a Substance Painter, you probably want to add on top of your stack, just add an AO mask, or like add your AO and set that to multiply. Multiply and set that to like 25% or something like that. Right, so this would be your stack. So you take like all the stuff that you have underneath, and you just on top overlay your AO on top of your base color, and just multiply that with like, let's say 25% to start out with. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna is it's gonna push the shadow like a bit more into crevices, right? Because usually what happens, and the issue with this is actually that Lumen does a lot of these calculations for you, right? Where if it's in sunlight, you get like a lot of nice AO, blah blah blah. But if it's in the dark, that's where you really can see that it's like it feels flat. So what you can do is kind of fake a little bit of that depth back in by adding your AO on top of your base color again. However, what usually happens with AO is when it's under direct sunlight, right? When the sun hits a surface, like it will completely negate most of the AO that's there. So this is what I mean, like this is not physically correct anymore, right? But I still love to do it in certain cases where I feel like a certain texture is kind of flat. Yeah. What you could also do, another tip, so this would be like number 1. Oh wait, I'm gonna flip it around. So this would be like number 2. Number 1 is actually play around with your normal intensity and see if you can do something with that. And a really easy way to do this in Unreal Engine is you go into your material, you add a flattened normal. That's a little node. Super easy to set up. You just plug in your normal and you just add in like a parameter that you can adjust, right? And then you set that to minus something. Let's say minus 0.5. And what that is actually going to do is instead of flattening it, because if you put that from like 0 to 1, it would be like completely flattening your normal. If you put that to minus, it would actually strengthen your normal. Right, so that could be like an interesting way of testing if making your normal stronger has the desired effect, what you want. Honestly, you do have to keep in mind that this mostly works only for tileables, right? Because tileables, you're never really gonna see the edges of it. Don't try this on like a unique prop because it's just gonna break your normals. Because if you're gonna strengthen them, like it's gonna like detach the normals from the seams and all that. It's gonna look ugly. So keep this to tileables. So those might be like 2 things to reduce flat surfaces. Right, so that would be the order in which I would try it. Like try it with like a normal intensity node, and then try overlaying like AO on top of the base color as well. That could also work. But honestly, I don't really mind what I'm seeing here though, especially like in the last update. Like I actually really like it. And I think what I also saw you do in one of the, what is it here? Where you have your tileable and then you add like geometry on top of it. That's awesome, right? Like if you do like a combination of that and then have interaction with the foliage on top of it, you can make like really beautiful stuff. So yeah, I would also do that, right? Like try those 2 examples, but then also like put some geometry into place where you think it really looks flat. That's also a good approach. Love to see it. Love it. Yeah, so great stuff, Sheila. I hope that helps. Let's I'm curious what you're gonna do with it. You know, there's always like so many options to do anything in game art, so I'm curious what your route is gonna be. I'll add that here, right? Like add more geo. That's always a good option. Thank you so much. No worries, Sheila. Great stuff. Honestly, I say it every week, but I'm really excited for this. I'm really excited to see how this is coming along, the speed that you're working with. So Freaking awesome job. And thank you so much for posting your work on like a weekly basis as well. I enjoy it. And then last but not least, we got Sunny Day. Sunny Day. Let's have a look. Sunny Day is making an abandoned communication station. Please get the updated pics. Okay, I will. How dare you posting updates in the middle of the stream? Let's look. That's from above. That's from here. Let me get those two pictures in. Oh wait, we're actually gonna... no. Mind. Cool! Sunny day, let's have a look. Two pictures here. Got some reference as well. This one. So wait, did I read the thing? So it's in Avatar where old RDA buildings are abandoned and decided to create something in the silver vibe. Still a very much work in progress. This is awesome. The primary things I'm looking for with advice is to how to best fill up the space. Too much foliage can be overdone. I'll be making some additional scattering acid, but somehow I don't think they'll make the composition feel less empty. Should I make the scene smaller? Sorry. Not super sure about behind the station. Thinking about turning into cliffs behind the station. To keep the lighting on the station itself similar. Some of the refs. Some of the updates. Okay, cool. So... how to best fill up the space? Yes. Let's have a look. So, I think the composition itself is quite interesting, right? Or like the layout of the space. Like you've got like an interesting creek and like there's a little open area. I'm assuming that they drive to the creek to get to the stage. It's been abandoned, but for how long? You know, because I think that would be... I'm gonna write a bunch of questions here, right? Let me get the chat up as well. Beautiful work, hell yeah! Listen, I'm on the grind right now. Appreciate the grind. Go for it. Let's see. Some more storytelling would be great. Yes, we're gonna dive into that for sure. Lore, in Avatar lore, it was approximately 10 years. I'd like to keep it around that time too. Okay, so the reason why I asked that question is because that's going to indicate like what we can do with the storytelling. Because the first thing that I was thinking about, because you have this beautiful setup of like this creek, right? It almost seems like such a natural access point for this scene, right? Where I was immediately like, oh, it would be nice to have like some tire tracks or something. But we can't really do that, right? So I think what we would have to do is we would have to look at some other maybe potential things that can kind of hint at the same thing, right? Like you would still want to kind of hint that occasionally people use this, right? Or like that people have explored this in recent years or something like that. But there's a lot that we can do with it, right? Like the more that I'm talking about it, like the more you could maybe even turn it into... I'm thinking about my childhood, right? And we had like a place behind our garden, you had to jump over like a little creek, and you would have like an open field, and then we'd have like a football field. But it would also, in the middle of that open field, they would have like a bunker, right? It was like an abandoned bunker from World War II. And the local people, or like the local kids, they kind of turned that into like a mini BMX route or something like that, right? Where they had like sand propped up against it, and they would like jump off of it and like ride on top of it and like kind of use it as like a little playground thing. There must be something that you can do with that, unless you want to keep it like fairly clean and it's just abandoned, right? If you want to keep the elements more focused on that, that could be cool too. So I'm just gonna make a note of that. Like, is there something more you want to do with the space, right? Wait, want to do with the space. Right? So that could be an interesting one. It doesn't have to be the story that I just came up with, right? It can also become something completely different as well. Maybe some destroyed mechanical stuff. Yeah, something that keeps it more in line with that thing as well. I think the stereotypical thing would be to make it like really overgrown, right? And I think that might honestly still be the best option here, but that means that you're gonna have to do like a lot with foliage and like really go crazy with it, right? Like I'm immediately thinking about like having like, I don't know, like a tall tree here, right? So that we're kind of obscuring the vision, and that there's like a canopy up here. Right, and that you see like a lot of overgrown stuff. And then that would kind of help you out as well. Right, with how much stuff you actually need to make or put in there. And then you would kind of do the same as the screenshot that you shared, right? Like it's very subtle, but they have it built up in a way where they have like the bushes, they kind of indicate that there's still like some sort of path. Right, so you would have like lots of trees, like very overgrown stuff. And then the bushes kind of help you. Like it would kind of be as if we're making a funnel. Right, so you're kind of making this V shape to kind of point you towards the path that's going to then lead you towards this building over here. Right? I think that could also be like a really cool option. And then you could do something where, I don't know, there's like a half submerged like wooden plank bridge over here, right? With like a bunch of planks missing. Could be interesting. And then do some like trees on this side as well. And then still have like the rocks peeking through as well. I can see implementing the big trees, but I'm a bit unsure where to start with the canopy. I think the canopy would honestly be like the easiest thing, and you don't necessarily have to do it, right? Like, let's say in your case, if you're unsure about where to start with the canopy, move it up, right? No one's gonna tell. Like, I think the only thing that in that case you still want to contain, like, we can just keep all these like different trunks, right, that are just sticking out. Have like really big, like the redwood forest, right? That's what I'm thinking about. Like really chunky, big trees, and then in the middle of this forest, you have like this abandoned research station, which could be very interesting. Oh, just do this. So yeah, if you're uncomfortable about that canopy, just move it up, right? Like this is still gonna look good if you have the trees almost reach up like all the way into the distance. And then what you do is put like a fake canopy, right? Because the only thing that you want is just have like this fake leaf mesh that is kind of like adding a little bit of variation in your shadow. That's the only thing that you really need from the canopy, even if you don't see it. Right? So that's the thing. Like you can find like artistic, you can maneuver artistically around like technical challenges. Like if you're unsure about like a certain part, like try to fix it with like an artistic implementation. Because yeah, this can be really cool. It just depends on what you want to do with it, right? I know that I say that a lot in these streams. Like if you don't want to make it like this and you want to keep it more open, I think that would be like the other option where you would have to make it like way lush, right? And like way more overgrown, but like in like a low foliage kind of way. And then have the rocks still be in the background, but the rocks are also like really overgrown as well. Maybe they have like maybe it's like Angkor Wat, right? Like what is that? Like the Mayan? Is that Mayan? Temple complex in Cambodia. Let me see if I can find like a picture. Like this is what I'm thinking about, right? Like this is what I envision the rocks in the background to be, where they almost have like enormous roots just coming from it, and then you see just like a tree growing from it or something like that, right? Something very, very weird, very unnatural, but it could be like a very interesting like visual thing. And that's honestly not too difficult to do, right? Like you just take the meshes that you have in your scene once you kind of done with the placement, and then you just build like in ZBrush, you just start sculpting on top of it, right? With Z spheres, and then you just do like a little sculpt and you just put like a tileable on it with like vertex paint. You can make that look really good. Just ideas, right? Just ideas. Right now I have 2 goals, one for the hand-in for my exam. Oh, it's in a week. Okay. Yeah, that kind of changes it. And one more long-term, which is adding the extra spice and hopefully matching it closely with Avatar. Yeah, I think if you want to really keep it close to Avatar, you have to go crazy with the foliage. Like, make really vibrant, cool-looking foliage, you know? Maybe even do, potentially you could even do like a night scene with like luminous foliage, right? I mean, I'm just literally throwing ideas. It's up to you what you do with them, right? Because you could definitely make like a cool night scene where you would almost make, you would still have, oh my god, what is that? You would still have like clusters of like very dense foliage, right? Like kind of like you're doing now. Like even go crazier, you know? Like we're not talking about like real life. It's more about like just making like really big clusters. Right? Like think about it more artistically. You have like really big chunks, and then you could kind of have right, like the big leafy boys. the big leaf plants that have like, I don't know, like the thing coming out of it and like the thing like emits light. Probably like way cooler plants in the Avatar universe, you know, but right, and then you just start implementing like a lot of those things like in the background as well. Yeah. Like a lot of variations or more avatar plants. Yeah, I think you have to be kind of smart, right? Like even if you look at the images that you were looking at, right? Like a lot of this stuff is just plants that we're familiar to, right? Like all of it almost. They're just like scaled up a little bit, but like all this stuff exists, right? I think what you could do to make it set itself apart is, especially around like the station, you could have like the more vibrant plants, right? Because the way that I'm thinking about it too is that you want to keep the focus more around this space. So I'm seeing if we have to take like this approach, right? Like I'm looking at clusters, like I'm almost thinking about it in like a very clustered kind of way, right? Where you would almost have something like this, right? Where all the purple clusters, they're like your really vibrant, like really intense colors. And then the more that you go to the edges, like the less there are of them. Doesn't mean that they can't be there, right? But like they will be like way less compared to the middle. And that's going to be really nice in attracting like all the focus to the center. And maybe you could even then tie that in with like, oh, it's a research station, but they did like, well, genetic modifications on plants or something like that. But then it got abandoned and plants just grew wild and they kind of spread out from the little station, right? You could almost kind of tie that into the story of this space rather than just making it like, oh, they're avatar-y plants, right? So you could do that too, where you could kind of have it as like, yeah, you could try to tie that in dynamically with the whole sea. It's a flower research station, and you can just see that you can have like vines coming out of like the window, right? And then you see like a couple of these blooms coming out of the woodwork here. It doesn't need much, and it will tell like a pretty cohesive story, right? Could be cool. Could be very cool. And then yeah, like more like I was saying before, right? Like in an artistic way, you could spread that around where it like pulls the attention to what you want people to look at. Be very interesting. Yes. So yeah, I mean, this is the thing, right? Like this is to me the fun thing about making environment art is we just came up with like two very different ideas, but they could both work in their own right. It just depends on what you want to say, right? You could have, I would honestly love to see something like this where it's like very dense, you can barely see the station itself, and it kind of has like a very horror kind of vibe, but like set in an Avatar way, right? Or you could do it like the one that we just said, right? Where you go more in line with what you know Avatar for, and it's like more easily recognizable. And then still try to tie it in with the research station. Like give the big trees a shot. Yeah, it's up to you. I don't think if we were to compare the two, right? I think if we look purely on story, I think the second one does have like a stronger link when it comes to storytelling, and it's gonna make for a more cohesive picture. I feel like the one with the big trees, you would have to still find some way to make it a bit more interesting than it is now. That's what I feel, because right now, I mean, I'm gravitating towards like the horror idea, right? And then maybe you could tie that in where like you would see like the door being smashed open and like something escaped, right? But that's like a very stereotypical idea. I don't know. It feels like it needs something more. Whereas with the second idea, like it feels like we're on the right track of making like a nice cohesive picture. I'm not saying that you shouldn't try the big trees, right? But I feel like if you want to take that route, I would love to see what you come up with in a storytelling way, and how you can make that into like a cohesive picture. Yeah. It's up to you. It's in your hands now, Sunny Day. Awesome. Yes, thank you so much. And yeah, best of luck. I mean, the stuff that's on display already looks really cool, right? I would also say best of luck to your exam in a week. And I'm curious to see what's coming out, like when you put the extra spice onto it. I'm really curious to see what you're gonna do with it. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Okay, switch it over. Whew. That was a chunky boy. It's also getting pretty late. So yeah, I'm just gonna round it off here. Thanks everyone for being here. Right. I'm gonna share the link to our website again. If you want to become a member, or if you just want to check out like some of the other cool stuff that we have. We have like a bunch of tutorials. We have like all the links to like all the workshops that we've done. It's all there. If you're interested in becoming an environment artist, go check that out. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you in the community. I'm gonna bounce. I wish you all a nice evening, and yeah, stay creative. Bye-bye. That's awesome, Maddie. That's awesome. See you there.